Hey everybody, it's the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm Aaron Mate, sitting in for Jimmy here with Americans comedian Kurt Metzger and Misha Pollan. Our guest is Scott Ritter, former Marine Corps intelligence officer and UN weapons inspector. His latest book is Disarmament in the Time of Perestroika, Arms Control and the End of the Soviet Union. And Scott, I wanted to ask you about this incident recently with Ursula von der Leyen. She's the president of the European Commission. And she gave a speech that was then quickly re-edited to take out some key lines. So we're going to watch the speech and we can see what was taken out of the original. So this is basically a comparison between the original and then the edited video.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine has brought death, devastation, and unspeakable suffering. We all remember the horrors of Bucha. It is estimated that more than 20,000 civilians and more than 100,000 Ukrainian military officers have been killed so far. Russia must pay for its horrific crimes.
So if you see what they did there, the part where she says that Ukraine has lost over 100,000 soldiers and 20,000 civilians, after that was posted, it was edited out. It was taken out. And it was almost as if we're not allowed to acknowledge, it is as if we're not allowed to acknowledge the death toll of Ukraine, a death toll that we have a major role in, given that we're fueling this war. So Scott Ritter, what was your reaction to seeing that gaffe, if you want to call it, of basically making the mistake of acknowledging Ukrainian civilian deaths and military deaths?
No, we're not allowed to talk about that. It's, because to talk about that would have people say, well, then what are we doing this for? I mean, because if our job is to defend Ukraine, let me give everybody sort of a pro hint. We're destroying Ukraine. It's not 100,000 dead. That's a very conservative number. The fact of the matter is, there's very good reason to believe that the Ukrainians have suffered over 250,000 military dead, and that number is growing. Again, Aaron, when you're losing 500, 800, 1,000 men a day in fighting, it doesn't take long for these numbers just to blow out of control beyond comprehension. And it means that, Lindsey Graham, the wonderful Democratic senator, Republican senator, from the state of South Carolina, he said one of the most honest things I think he's ever said as a politician, that the United States wants Ukraine to fight to the last Ukrainian. Well, we're heading in that direction. Things are getting very bad. They're sending units. There's a battle right now unfolding in a place called Bakhmut. It's acquired the nickname the meat grinder. And Russian units are being sent in. 90% of let's say a battalion deploys there, 500 guys. Within a week, 90% of them are dead or permanently crippled. The others are compelled to retreat. And then they just replace them with another battalion. And this goes on and on and on, the meat grinder, just grinding up these forces. And that's not the only battle. It's happening throughout the front line. The tactics aren't working. The operations aren't working. The strategy's not working. All we're hinging on is that while they die, we need the Ukrainians to kill as many Russians as possible. Our strategy was articulated by Lloyd Austin back in April and May, I believe, when he said that what we need to do is bring so much pain to Russia that they never again think about carrying out this kind of operation in Europe. But what Lloyd Austin isn't realizing is that it's not just Ukrainians that are dying. There's thousands of mercenaries that are dying, Polish mercenaries, Western mercenaries. All of the equipment we're providing, these tens of billions of dollars of equipment, is being destroyed. So, it's not just human deaths. It's the destruction of a nation. What she didn't talk about is the fact that Ukraine right now is suffering almost a permanent blackout. Much of its urban areas, its cities have no electricity because the Russians have taken out the electrical grid. That means running water's not available. We're on the cusp of a humanitarian disaster where people are going to die of famine, disease, exposure. The nation will die. This won't be isolated cases. This is the death of a nation. And the people who killed them aren't the Russians, but they're ostensible friends in the West who set Ukraine up for this very result. Ursula was trying to, be conservative. She wasn't being honest, but even her conservative figure was too much truth for the West to handle. So they had to cut it out, because if we want to call ourselves human beings and we reflect on what's happening to Ukraine right now, we should all hang our heads in collective shame. We are destroying a nation. We are destroying a people. We are destroying a culture. This could have been avoided had we simply pushed the Ukrainians to accept the Minsk Accords. But we now know that the Minsk Accords from 2014, 2015, which Russia was pleading, all you have to do is accept the Minsk Accords, which you've already said you want. We negotiated this. But we now know, thanks to Angela Merkel and Hollande, the former French president, that they were never serious about this. We know this from Petro Poroshenko, the former Ukrainian president, that the accords, this ceasefire, wasn't meant to bring peace, but to buy time so Ukraine could have its military trained by NATO to fight Russians. It was the West, Ukraine, NATO, that was pursuing a war policy. Russia didn't want this war. Russia tried to do everything to avoid this war. Only when all diplomatic options were exhausted did Russia go to war. The fault for the dead Ukrainians is not the Russians pulling the trigger, but the Western people who set the Ukrainians up to be the targets.
Scott Ritter, former Marine Corps intelligence officer, former UN weapons inspector. His latest book is called Disarmament in the Time of Perestroika, Arms Control and the End of the Soviet Union. And his website is scottritterextra.com. Scott, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. And next time I'm on, let me know. I'll have my mother call in and we'll do that whole rose petal falling from the sky. I like that.
It's a plan. It's a plan. Thanks, Scott. Good to see you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Everybody, we're doing live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles in January and February in Los Angeles. And then we're going to Tempe, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Nashville. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets and become a premium member while you're there.